Welcome. You are watching Channel World Seed. I'm John Paul Judson, live and direct from the World Seed Congress in Istanbul. In this session, we will be discussing developments in biologicals, discussing the power of biologicals and their influence on seed systems. Are biologicals representing a new generation of seed treatments? Are farmers looking to biologicals as an alternative to pesticides? And what will be the likely interaction between developments in biologicals and seed systems more generally? To discuss these issues, I am joined by three esteemed guests from the seed sector. Rob Gaffney is Director for Global Marketing of Seed Treatments at BASF. Christine Hazel is Global Regulatory Lead at Corteva, and Remco Kwakman, he's Global Seed Technology Lead for Vegetables at Syngenta. So welcome to the three of you.
Thank you.
Now, I started off my introduction talking about new very much. Rob, when we're talking about biologicals, are we talking about something that is new, or is it just new that it's on the agenda?
John, it could be looked at new because it's on the agenda, but frankly, biologicals have been around for a significant amount of time. And, essentially, no, they're not new, but some have been utilized in a form of nitrogen-fixing bacteria that help growers utilize on legume-type products to fixate nitrogen. That helps the plant grow. Others could be a bacillus form that's been used to suppress pest diseases, and some of those products have been available on the market, if not decades, actually some centuries. So I think what's new today is the evolution and the revolution of biologicals and how it's becoming part of a very important sustainability situation. Work in combination with synthetic chemistries to give a new mode of action and to allow growers to raise a good sustainable crop, to help raise a good crop, and that sustains viability for a long time into the future. So it's an exciting time, and I think more importantly, spending a lot of time of trying to maximize and harmonize stability of the microbes, looking at shelf life, how long, not only in a jug, but in some cases when these are applied to seed, they may have to be viable on that seed for several years. So it's also important that research is being done to make sure that that's a living organism, that it's going to be alive when it's needed to use. So I think we're just on the cusp of, again, moving forward into the industry. And while some have been around, there's more to come. So it's an exciting time in the biological.
Yeah, the concept itself has been around for a long time, but there's a step change in the way technology is also being applied to it. What kind of functions do biologicals actually perform, and how are they currently regulated, Christine?
So start with the simple, and we may get to the more complex when we get to the regulatory. But as we talk about function of biological products, we can start with a couple broad categories. The first are biopesticides. So similar to conventional pesticides, they help manage insects, diseases, even nematodes. They're very similar function to pesticides, but their action might actually be the microbe itself or the natural products that the microbe creates that can perform that action. Biopesticides can also be part of an integrated pest management system. So what they bring, as Rob mentioned, they can bring a different mode of action, and in some cases novel and diverse modes of action that can help with slowing down the development of pest resistance to protect the genetic package, as well as if there's a trait or a set of traits with that. So that's biopesticides. The second category is biostimulants. So these are products that enable enhancement of plant growth or resilience within the plant to withstand stresses such as temperature, drought stress, any other environmental stresses. Biostimulants really help the plants grow stronger and healthier, and in some cases can enhance their natural defense system so that they can protect themselves from environmental pressures, whether they be insects, diseases, or other abiotic or natural stresses. The third category is biofertilizers. So similar to conventional fertilizers, really making nutrients available or providing nutrients to that plant. Again, that enables stronger, sturdier plants that will enable them to grow a really healthy crop. So when we get to regulatory, simple question, not a simple answer, but we'll break it down into the two categories. So we'll start with biopesticides and how they're regulated. Biopesticides are actually regulated very similarly to conventional pesticides. The systems are very similar and pretty much harmonized across most regions. Not everywhere, but there's a more harmonization. And so the data requirements for performance and for safety are similar. And also the timelines may be similar. So not really faster, but in some cases there are. The other maybe improvement is if the microbe is familiar, it's a product that's already been on the market, might have a slightly different mode of action, there's opportunities for data exceptions or data waivers to maybe lower that data burden. When we get into the second category, biostimulants, which would include biofertilizers in that category, it's much more complex, it's not harmonized today, and it really varies country by country, product by product, and usage. The timelines might be shorter, but the framework for regulatory for a biostimulant category is still evolving.
Okay, so it's there are several functions. Depending on the function, you might fall in a different kind of regulatory category.
Correct.
How are farmers then accessing biologicals? Are they able to access biologicals, like the later categories of biologicals? And what would be their main considerations of choosing biologicals over other types of treatments?
Well, I do think we do see the biological products available in the market more and more, but also at the same time, it's really depending on where you are and which crops you have in scope. And I think there's a blend of things that they take into consideration when they make a decision between a synthetic product or a biological product. And first, the regulatory status of the products is one where we see that there's a high pressure and increasing pressure on the synthetic products. And that makes the biological products much more relevant in the decision process. The mode of action against the pest management resistance, of course, is helping to also make the choices for the farmer more flexible within their crop management. And then, of course, there's the environmental aspects where the biological products are much more likely to be more friendly to work with as a worker, and also I think the general public perception on the use of less chemistry in the food system is one of the decision factors, I think, for this type of product. But we do also have some challenges with this product. I think the mode of action or the efficiency of the product itself, we need to really realize that there's really a difference compared to the synthetic conventional products. The application may be more complex, and with that also the cost picture of using these type of products may be very different compared to the conventional products. So I think that's the blend of decision-making process.
So there are different factors when you will consider synthetic versus biologicals, but it also seems that we might not be quite there yet in terms of controlling completely the way biologicals perform in the field. Rob, what is actually the level of technology readiness, let's say, of biologicals, and are we still very much in a kind of demonstration phase? Are we still in the lab? Where are we roughly in this development of biologicals?
Well, it's a great question, but I think overarching and what might be new to some, biologicals, there are a few that have moved beyond the demonstration stage. Some have been integrated into systems for over 10 years or so, depending on what part of the world you're in. But they're there, they've moved past, they're efficacious, they're bringing good return to the grower and helping produce a good crop. I think what is yet to go is the new stage and what's potentially being developed. And as I indicated earlier, it's about stabilizing microbes, making sure they're available for a longer period of time. Like nitrogen-fixing bacteria, essentially the shelf life is rather short. I think it's a challenge to the industry to make sure these microbes of the future, while they can augment and work alongside synthetic chemistries, that they're actually stabilized and actually prove and do the functions that they're meant to do. And at the end of the day, the farmer will be paying for this. Is he getting the value in return? So that's really where we're at on that biologic, and it's an exciting time because even things like gene editing will help contribute to understanding better, more effectively how these biologics will work in the future.
And looking at not just the pesticide, but also the biostimulant aspect, you can imagine that interaction between certain traits and biologicals. Christine, if we move closer to seed specifically now, and the type of interaction in terms of treatment that you might envisage with seeds, I mean, are seeds ready for biologicals, to be treated with biologicals, or does that in itself represent an extra challenge on top of the challenge of controlling biologicals itself?
There are many challenges, as those of us that work in the research community are aware. But as Rob mentioned, there are some products that have been successfully used on seed for a number of years. But if we think about that extra challenge as developers of biological products start working with the seed industry and seed producers, the big challenge is performance and predictability. So microbes, just as seed, are biological organisms. And so they can be influenced by the environment. Seed breeders and seed producers know genetic by environmental interactions. The microbes can be influenced by the environment. High temperature could be a factor. Different soil types, even crop rotation can affect the performance. So what will be really important for the developers who are working with the seed companies as we're developing biological seed treatment products is working together to have sufficient data, not just sufficient data, but really extensive data to get that predictability of the performance, but then also really understanding what are those microorganisms doing? What is that biological product doing? To understand the mode of action will help us better, hopefully, predict performance over time.
Now, I'd also be interested to hear your views on how the seed sector will develop in tandem, right, with the developments in biologicals. What we saw with synthetic chemicals is a large amount of integration, right, where companies would both be providing pesticides and seeds. That was going very much hand in hand. Is that a kind of a development that you would expect, that seed companies would gradually integrate a lot more solutions linked to biologicals, like they did with synthetic chemicals?
I think we're really heading in that direction because the model, the concept really makes a lot of sense. I think it's the total package that's really helpful for farmers. So we have the breeders and the breeding companies that are creating the genetic opportunities and combining that with an efficient seed treatment package. We are creating this really powerful seed solution for farmers to start their process with. So that's really convenient for everyone to work with. I do think that the knowledge on the biological products is still within the field of expertise, where we will see a lot of cooperation and partnership happening between the seed companies and the biological expertise companies. But I also think that will change on the longer run, where the seed companies will start to develop more in-depth knowledge on the biological products themselves and build the integrated knowledge to create these integrated offers themselves.
I mean, you've talked about predictability, right? And that's obviously one of the interesting combinations that the seed sector has provided, is the link between breeding and the chemicals, right? In the field. Now with biologicals we have a little bit less predictability. On the other hand, it takes a long time to develop a variety. So maybe Rob, just a reflection on how do you see the developments in breeding to try and connect then with developments in biologicals, which are a little bit less predictable, but on the other hand, you'll need to get the varieties to work a lot more with biologicals. How will that impact research on the breeding front?
Well, I think that's a great question. And John, I would say this, as I look at the moniker for International Seed Federation, seed is life. So the seed industry does their investments of producing high quality seed that produces for the growers, regardless. And I think the sooner that these products can be integrated even at the breeding aspect, they can look, how do they work in harmony? Do they work in harmony? And at the end of the day, seed companies that may apply this commercially let's think of it as seed is then the conveyance mechanism. So all those important benefits the seed brings, it also is the conveyance mechanism of applying product as a targeted amount directly on the seed instead of broadcast across the whole hectare or acre, if you will. So I think the earlier, and these companies are doing that today, but as these new technologies come about, one, is it safe on the seed? Safe, obviously, to the environment. It's gone through the rigors of testing. And does this make access by growers easier? It comes on the seed, they plant the material, things are put on that seed to keep it on the material, and that's all part of sustainability, making sure we're good stewards of the environment. And at the end of the day, it's something that can help that seed prosper and get off to a good, fast, healthy start.
Now, do you think developments here are basically being done in a little bit in silos, that different companies are working on this? Is there some level of interaction at the level of the sector on these kinds of issues? So, I mean, do you think it's important that the seed sector in general addresses developments in biologicals? And maybe can you say a word of what ISF is currently doing in this area, Christine?
Sure. I think the why now we're having this conversation is back to Remco's point and even Rob's point. Collaboration is going to be key for the success of these products. When we think about the regulatory pressures today on conventional pesticides, not just here in Europe, but everywhere around the globe, biological products and specifically biological seed treatment products provide an opportunity to have new innovations that maybe get us away from that are in most cases safer for the environment, safer for people. The challenge, however, and where ISF can really provide a lot of support to the seed industry sector is helping to bring in an aligned understanding of what these new innovations are, really distill the complexity, but then also help and engage in conversations of the importance of collaboration, of the biological product developers and the seed industry working together to understand these products and how to bring them forward. With the regulatory pressures, a lot of backlog of pesticide reviews. Oftentimes the framework is not set up to effectively evaluate biological products or biological pesticides, so we need to support the regulators and the policymakers in these frameworks. So we're in a really good position as an ISF group and as our seed-related innovation coordinating group to help facilitate that science-based understanding and really have those engagements and dialogues.
So it means also potentially working with other types of partners, providing inputs to farmers and growers. Remco, what would you see as being, let's say, the main benefits at the end of the day for growers working with biologicals? I mean, you mentioned some of the health potentially aspects of working with those, but is there also a call from farmers and growers to say we need to develop this a lot more? Is there an expectation, or is it rather kind of driven by the seed sector or the biological sector?
Both. Sorry, both. I think.
I think it's both.
I think it's a push and pull. It really is.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a number of advantages to working with biological products, and I think the regulatory pressure is one where the growers are really looking for solutions, while the current toolbox is getting more empty and empty. I think that the environmental pressure is also an aspect to this, where indeed working with these products it's more healthy. It's more they're seen as less stringent, so the biodiversity may benefit from this, the worker safety may benefit from this, and indeed, the toolbox of crop protection products with the mechanisms that we have may be extended by using biological products in the crop protection space as well. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the blend. Yeah.
All of you mentioned to some extent the impact of regulation and the interaction between these developments and what is possible, both on the pesticide, synthetic chemical side and on the biological side. Obviously, governments will also be working to set their policy frameworks. I mean, what do you think would be let's say, the winning argument for governments when it comes to allowing more for development of biologicals, making the regulatory aspects of biologicals a lot more ready to market, let's say? What would be the key arguments you would expect to make in terms of potentially sustainability on the farm or in growing, Rob?
So I think at the end, it's synthetic chemistries goes through a lot of tough rules, regulations, and scrutiny. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it just does. I think the same can be said. Some people think that, hey, it's a biological and it's easy to bring to the market. But I think what's really important is not only the grower's education, seed company's education, but more important, policy and governing regulatories and authorities. As we step back, what appears to be almost awe-inspiring, but yet daunting, how could we all step back as a new day moving forward is looking over the horizon, that if we all work together and collaborate, and I think it was even mentioned yesterday at the welcome ceremony, is there's been talk in a lot of areas. How do we activate and take action to make things happen and to step out on that new frontier and bring these new things to real life that mean things, that perform, and can coexist within humanity and sustainable agriculture. So it's important that, particularly around the policy making, that we really step up. ISF could help with that. And more importantly, it's fundamentally around the globe. How can seed companies better understand the future and the environment that they're dealing with in the regulatory realm?
But do you expect that ISF could go as far as to develop a set of policy recommendations on this? I mean, obviously we're dealing with a global framework here at ISF, but the reality is that rules are very different and scattered, and you mentioned that there wasn't a lot of harmonization on biologicals. Could you maybe reflect on some of the regions that are maybe a little bit more advanced on this compared to others potentially, and where you see opportunities in terms of policy?
Well, if we take a step back and look at what our seed-related innovations coordinating group is doing, because of the increased demand, excitement about these products, and interest both from farmers, the seed industry, and even policymakers and regulators, there's an expectation about performance. We have to also manage that expectation. These products are tools. They're tools in a toolbox. They're not going to replace every conventional chemistry. So we have to set that expectation. And I think ISF is in a good position to help manage expectations, align our understanding about what these products can do, why they're important for sustainable agriculture. When they're used as seed treatment products, they can be a precision agriculture tool, again. And so with that, we're not necessarily setting policy recommendations from our coordinating group, but actually we're putting together an education packet, a guidance document, to start to align that understanding, help us try to simplify the complexity as much as we can, and create some tools to enable the national and regional seed associations to engage with their stakeholders, right? Their policymakers, because policy and regulatory occurs at the country and regional level, not at kind of the global level. So we have an opportunity to help the national and regional seed associations with an outreach strategy, with an education strategy, and put together some materials that they can use, and as a seed industry have an aligned message, so we're all speaking from the same terminology.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that the seed sector can adapt to all sorts of developments and evolutions, right? I mean, you're working more specifically in the area of vegetables. Yeah. Is it a little bit crop specific in terms of these developments related to biologicals, or does it really cover the whole spectrum? Like, do vegetables, like, particularly, for instance, are particularly interested in developments in biologicals?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's specifically typically available for interest for vegetable crops. I don't know.
It could be across the board. I mean,
Yes.
others, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. You know, our organization, we look at multiple crops across the board, and obviously probably like maize or corn or things of that nature, that's probably been more readily adopted in some areas of the world. But I think overall, it's, as we look at this whole sphere to augment and segment, and as Christine indicated, the biological may not totally be able to replace a synthetic chemistry, but it can obviously bring a viable tool to the toolbox that could be utilized in a manner that helps us advance and accelerate new technologies and innovation.
Okay, perfect. Maybe then, as you talked about the importance of education, right, and I guess awareness raising more generally in the sector. So plenty of people listening online, plenty of people in the expo room here hearing this. What would be maybe your final message to the seed sector? You know, to keep an eye out for developments in biologicals. Maybe a final word, Christine.
Okay, I'll start. I'll put my regulatory hat on because that's the hat I know most. I would say kind of a call to action and a recognition for the seed industry to understand the demand is high. Policymakers it's an evolving space right now. I think the seed industry, working with their seed associations, will create some tools and make those available. These are important tools for agricultural productivity, but also that balance with environmental stewardship. These are going to be important tools going forward, so we want them to be successful. And also to the biological providers, collaborate with your seed company partners, because having that data to ensure consistency of performance and reliability will only ensure the credibility of this technology going into the future and help us with food security long term.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Remco, your call to the seed sector, you know, to help you in your work.
Well, I think it's very clear that this is a type of product that's here to stay. This is part of the future of agriculture. So, yeah, I think we need to group ourselves and establish ourselves to be able to work towards this future and make it a success. So I think that's all into finding each other, finding this collaboration, collecting the right data, research-based data, and with that trigger the processes to develop the innovative products, but also do the teaching of indeed, like you mentioned, the new ways of working that come with these new products. So I think that there's an opportunity there for us as an industry to shape that future, be in the driver's seat, and take the ownership of this future coming up.
Okay, brilliant. Rob, a final word to your seed sector colleagues.
Thank you. I would simply say this. I think the seed industry is at a critical inflection point. And as I said earlier, seed is life. Seed companies have invested a lot into bringing high quality seed around the globe. And I think it's one of these things. Stay engaged, work with organizations that are developing this, and sometimes even the seed companies developing those themselves. But more importantly, let's try to break down the barrier of getting away from the idea that these things are put on, they don't do anything. Stick with the science base. And I would simply say this, and as I said earlier, I think we're now to a point in time where these can be utilized as a tool together, augment, and help better produce better good quality seed around the globe. And at the end of the day, particularly farmers, their mission is to produce good food, support their families, and do everything in a sustainable and environmentally safe way. So I would challenge the industry. Let's not give up. It's going to be daunting, but let's think about what might be impossible possible.
Brilliant. Rob, Christine, Remco, thank you so much for having shared your insights. I hope you enjoyed this discussion online and here as well in the expo room. Watch this space to hear more about developments in biologicals and get involved with the work at ISF. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.